I think we all know we are dealing with a different time in college football as a Pac-12 stunner dropped in the late hours last night into the early morning hours today. And the news is that the Pac-12 is going to decimate the Mountain West by adding Boise State, who obviously I think all of us recognize is the biggest football brand in the Mountain West. But you're talking about Boise State, Fresno State, Colorado State, and San Diego State allegedly joining a reimagined Pac-12. And the funny part is, what did we talk about yesterday on this show? What does a reimagined Pac-12 look like? And we wondered aloud yesterday right here in this space, why was J.D. Wicker, the athletic director at San Diego State, talking so openly about leaving the Big 12's offer on the table? Well, now we know it's because he had already accepted an invitation to a reimagined Pac-12, and our sources are telling us that this is just the beginning for the Pac-12. Now, obviously, this is a large story that layers are going to unfold as the day today and tomorrow goes on. But what we know so far is that these four schools are said to be leaving the Mountain West to join the Pac-12. They will be added, obviously, to Washington State and Oregon State. Now, sources in the TV industry are telling us here on the Monty Show that the CW is willing to expand its relationship with the Pac-12, as well as an unnamed streaming partner who we believe to be Prime Video would pick up a large portion of the non-CW football games and basketball games in the reimagined Pac-12. But the question always is, and we don't know the answer, how much money is a new TV deal in a reimagined Pac-12 with a minimum of 8 members, which we're going to get to in a moment? How much money, how valuable is that league? Does it draw more water than the $3.5 million per school in the Mountain West? I think it absolutely does, because when you look at what the Pac-12 is getting out of the Mountain West, they're getting their bigger brands. Say what you want about the J.D. Wickers and Adela Della Torres of the world in San Diego. San Diego is a valuable TV market. It brings this conference back to Southern California, who they so spectacularly lost with USC and UCLA. And I think the one remaining question here is, who else do you add? Because I think a lot of people believe they need 8. I am told that at a minimum, to be a viable conference, the Pac-12 will need to get to 10 teams. And I don't think there's any doubt that they are going to be reaching out across the rest of the Mountain West, which we'll have some details for you in about 5 minutes. But at this point, this doesn't seem like a move that is a finisher, Jake. It feels like a move that is just the beginning.
Yeah, I feel like it's the start of the process, and I think that, the Pac-12, a couple things you have to remember here is the Pac-12 is under new leadership, right? All the folks who were running the Pac-12 before are largely gone. So we're not seeing a Pac-12 leadership operating the same way that they would have in the past. And I think that's a key point. That's the first thing you need to understand. I think the second thing you need to understand about this whole situation is the direction and the path back to long-term viability and just stability in the conference. I mean, you have to understand that there's a process in place here where they're obviously going to, have to add back these teams. And we know the first 4 that they're going to go after and are adding, allegedly. And we know that they need to add probably another 4 more to be taken seriously. So when you think about that, there's a long way to go here. And I think, questions that everybody is asking after this story came out late last night is obviously implications with the playoff and money and yada, yada, yada. There's a lot there. But I think the biggest thing with the Pac-12 right now is, can this conference truly climb back and get back on its feet with these brands out of the Mountain West for the most part? Because I look at it and I say, yeah, Boise State's a great brand. San Diego State's obviously had some success in basketball, as we discussed yesterday, but we're not talking about adding, like huge brands in college football right here at the power level. We're talking about brands who potentially could make that jump in Boise State, but there's still a lot of gray area there. So for the conference, I think that there's still a lot of questions to be asked, but I would say that this should be viewed as a positive move. I mean, at least they're trying. I mean, obviously, this is pretty uncharted territory for a conference to lose basically every member in your conference, to have a window in time when you can restart the conference. And now you're taking this step. So I think this is very much like, by college football standards, uncharted territory for everybody involved.
Oh, I agree with that 100%. And the real questions here for me: does this make the Pac-12 a power conference? And almost immediately, the first person I spoke to in television this morning, who has been a source that has been pretty nails on this for us throughout this expansion process, said no. This would not bring power conference money or value to the Pac-12, almost no matter who they add. And I think that's a really interesting caveat, because again, the TV distribution is what this conference would be after. But if you are on the CW in Prime Video, it gives you significant reach. But it also tells me, because of who the CW is and where their reach is, I think that you have to get into Texas and Florida here if you are the Pac-12. I don't see any way that you can simply be a West Coast product. That is not going to work, because it does not give you the audience, the population, or the reach that you would need to bring yourself of value. And when you look at the way that the college football playoff is set up through 2026, it's 12 teams with an auto bid for the G5. So is this new reimagined Pac-12 aiming for 25 and 26? I don't think so. I think what this reimagined Pac-12 is aiming for is what's after the next 2 years. What happens when we get past 2026 and we go through these 2 years of a 12 team playoff? That's where this new reimagined Pac-12 is positioning itself. Because one of the most important details, and I think that this is really important, if you are going to leave the Mountain West, you are required to give $18 million in a 2-year notice. If you want that to be a 1-year notice, it'd be $36 million per school. Now, if you do some math on that, and you look at penalties and you look at the cost of this, you're looking at between $130 and $140 million in exit fees, because that's what's in the scheduling agreement. There is a poaching provision between the Pac-2 and the Mountain West that requires them to pay a penalty. I believe it's $10 million per school that they poach. Each team is required to give $18 million on a 2-year, $36 million on a 1-year notice. This is not a small amount of money. And my sources have told me that the Pac-12 conference is willing to pay a significant portion of those exit fees for these universities to leave the Mountain West. It's simply a matter of finding 4 more teams to join this conference to make it whole. And when that happens, and it's going to happen, it's not a matter of will they get back to 10. They're going to be back to 10 in short order. How much is it going to cost? And how much value do their new members add to this? Because I think one of the most intriguing conversations here is what is happening behind the scenes and how did all of this play out? Sources close to the situation told me early this morning that there is absolutely a leverage play being used here by the 4 exiting members in the Pac-12 conference. There is a belief that a school like UNLV is being leveraged here, because UNLV, I am told, was very hesitant to even have the discussion because of the value position that a new reimagined 10-team Pac-12 would be in. Is there more value in a reimagined Pac-12, or is there more value in hoping for a super league? That's the real question here, because the Pac-12 is playing hardball. The Pac-12 is essentially, from what I'm told, telling people, hey, this is your one opportunity to get into this league. Because if you wait to see the what ifs or, hey, what's going to happen here, we're not going to give you the opportunity to join us. And when we get that big TV deal, we're not going to give you the opportunity to join us. And when we reform this league and we get an auto bid, because make no mistake about it, the Pac-12 believes that they're a power conference who should have an automatic bid to the college football playoff. They believe that. That is unquestioned. And they are telling universities like UNLV, we're going to have power conference status. We're going to have an automatic bid. And if you don't get in now, you're not going to get in ever. And it's a really interesting moment in time for UNLV, who we have not heard much from when it comes to realignment. And I think UNLV is being very, very pragmatic and very careful about their next step. Because I also think if you go into this Pac-12 and they are not made a power team and they do not have an auto bid to the college football playoff, boy, are you in a really bad situation. Because if you are Boise State, specifically Boise State football, you already were in a position where you had an auto bid if you won the Mountain West Conference. Essentially, you had an auto bid. If you were the best G5 team, you were getting that spot. And now, if you go to the Pac-12 and you do not have power conference status and you do not have an auto bid to the college football playoff, this is a huge, huge failure if you are Boise State. Because the only thing that matters for Boise State is getting that college football playoff money, which only comes through an automatic bid, because you are not going to be an at-large team. Your percentages, if you are, and look at all four of these teams, if you are San Diego State football, if you are Fresno State, if you are Colorado State, and if you are Boise State, are you ever one of the 12 best teams in college football? Are you ever ranked as one of the 12 best teams in college football? Will you ever have the hammer if you are ranked one of the 12 best teams that somehow the fourth and fifth team in the SEC is not more deserving than you are as a non-power conference team that doesn't have an auto bid? And I think, Jake, that's the biggest thing here is the risk of what you are giving up, leaving the comfort. Now, obviously, the money is a problem, but leaving the comfort of a G5 for the hope that you will again be designated a power conference and given an auto bid, that is a huge risk for Boise State.
Absolutely. And I think that, Boise State has the luxury of being one of the top dogs, if not the top dog in the Mountain West. And a school like UNLV or San Diego State doesn't necessarily operate with those luxuries. And I think that, the other consideration that I think, will get vetted out, of course, over time is the revenue sharing situation that we're seeing play out in college football. If you're going to be a power conference, you can be sure that revenue sharing is going to be part of that situation, which immediately brings us back to what is this CW prime deal, alleged prime deal that we're being told, what does that look like? I mean, how much money are you actually making? Could a school like Boise State or UNLV or San Diego State even afford to do that? So I think it's the college football playoff. I think it's the P&L sheet of the school and the athletic department. I think I think right here today, the insecurity that you would feel as UNLV, being courted by this conference that just sort of popped up again. And because that's what this is. I mean,
yes.
I'm not going to sit here and say that this is some prodigious conference again that, because the Pac-12 will tell you, and again, as much as leadership has changed, we're already seeing some of the same narratives coming out of the reporting, which is, hey, this conference has been around for more than 100 years. We have all this heritage and tradition, come play in our conference, and that's just not going to be good enough that's not going to be good enough to get people to join. You're going to have to show A plus B equals you're getting paid and you have reliability as a school. And I just think you can't right now today, you can't show that. And that's where I say, I'm not surprised that JD Wicker and company decided to hop on board as one of the first teams in, because what else were they going to do? Right. I mean, if you look at Boise State, like I think you're spot on. If you're Boise State, why would you make a move to this situation out of the Mountain West that's just lateral. That's not a raise, if you will.
I don't know.
So that's why I agree. The Pac-12 is most certainly selling this as, hey, we're gonna be a power conference, not a group of 5 conference. And I just think that that's dangerous. I think that you like obviously,
I agree.
Obviously, I don't know, who they're talking to or what guarantees they think they have. But I'm telling you right now, it is not a lock that that's going to be a power conference. I mean, you certainly don't have the brands to justify being a power conference, but if you can get to 10 teams, 12 teams, and you can put something together, I guess maybe you have a shot. But
well, and here's my question: what is the, and this is a reach, nobody has told me this, but just talking to some folks early this morning, what is the number financially that the Pac-12 has to get to? I mean, I think it's $50 million a year. I think you have to get these new members at a minimum. You've got to guarantee them $5 million in TV revenue.
Right.
At a minimum in their media rights deal, it would have to be $50 million. Who is going to help you get to $50 million? Well, if you look, the state of Texas now becomes incredibly important. And I think without a doubt, UTSA has to be in that conversation, because are they not on a level, especially in football? You're telling me that they're not on a Mountain West level already? I think they are.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Well, I think you look at the expectations of their program, it would suggest they are.
And the bigger issue is, I don't know that there's another program in Texas that makes sense. Texas, El Paso, UTEP has just not been good enough. I don't think that a Tarleton is going to do that. And we were looking at this. I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, looking at Conference USA is very interesting, but aren't we all looking at the AAC? Is in that, because I think there's one team in the AAC, and I've tried to reach out this morning. Obviously, it's only 8:30 in the morning in Florida, so it's been tough to get in touch with most people. But I think South Florida is an incredibly important asset right now, because that is a university that, had they had an on-campus stadium at the time, I believe they would have gotten a Big 12 invite. I think that they would have been. I think the UCF South Florida argument was pretty heated. And I think if you look at USF, I think that is a very interesting target.
Well, and I think, it's not just the school itself. I also think one consideration to being a power conference in today's landscape is geography. You look at, the SEC is really the only conference that's not a national conference, where they're more kind of cornered in that section of the country. But they get away with that, obviously, because of the brands and the quality of the football they play. They can get away with that. So you look at the Big 10 and you look at the Big 12. You're spread out. I mean, you've got Mountain Time Zone, Pacific Time Zone, obviously Central and East Coast as well. So I think those two conferences are the pinnacle of being national, conferences from a geographic standpoint. But I'm telling you, I also think that this ACC situation kind of plays into decision making if you're this Pac-12, upstart. You think about the timeline we're working with here. So obviously we're going to get an official announcement. Like, we're going to get, some more understanding when this officially comes out that they're adding these schools. But if, the ACC melts down in the next, inside of the next 2 years, because remember, they've got till July 2026. So you've got all of next year and then half of the following year to add these teams and get it done. Now, obviously, you need leeway to do paperwork and process. So it's basically by the end of next year, you would have to add. You'd have to get to 10. I agree. It needs to be 10 at least. So will the ACC melt down before then? I don't think so. I would be surprised. But it's something you got to look at.
But they don't need to melt down now. I think, again, the 2026 calendar is where you need to be looking at. I think that's the next major shift in power conference realignment. And it is expensive. A lot of people have already been asking me on DM, do I think that Cal and Stanford can get out of the ACC? We know that story. We've seen this movie before.
Right.
You're going to pay more in lawyers' fees than exit fees. And I think that's a non-starter. Unless somehow, some way, Florida State and Clemson are like, oh, yeah, if we kick them to the curb, let's do it. I think that'd be very difficult for the ACC to do, and I don't think that they would do it. And again, I just ask, why would Stanford and Cal do that? I also am very curious about USF, and I think the Bulls they break ground in what, October on their new stadium in Tampa. I said Tampa, Florida. That's a huge market. That's a huge market. And that's already a very competitive athletic program. I'd be looking at them. Now, obviously, I don't believe that the Tulanes and the Memphises of the world are great fits. But would anybody question the Pac-12 if they added USF, Tulane, and UTSA?
No, I wouldn't question them as a G5 conference.
And then,
not at all.
And then
right?
You add UNLV.
Yeah. I mean,
and all of a sudden you have 4, and now you have a representation in every time zone.
I get it from that standpoint. This is their problem, though. It's that's the play. I agree. That's the play. But that play doesn't justify power status. And that's what I'm wondering. Who are you talking to that could help get you to that next? Because you only need maybe 2 more schools that are power players right now to kind of justify and say, hey, well, we've got Oregon State, Washington State, we've got these 2 power schools.
I'm telling you, they've got to get this UNLV situation worked out. They've got to have it. And I think it is very, what the UNLV, watch UNLV in this. Watch UNLV in this. That's the first school that was brought up to me this morning.
Right.
Las Vegas is a great television market, but the problem is UNLV is not even third there. You look at the Golden Knights. The Raiders obviously are number 1. You look at the Golden Knights. There's a lot of people who believe that the Aces are a bigger draw than UNLV. And at this point, I can't say I disagree.
Well, there's been a lot of talk about the NBA expanding into that market too.
But that's not that hasn't happened. I'm talking about like what's going on right now there. Mm-hmm. Right. I think we would agree the Raiders are number 1.
Of course.
The region is not, and I think you need to understand this as well. The region is not just Las Vegas, Clark County, even just the state of Nevada. The region is the mountain region, which is, hey, Nevada, Arizona, northern Arizona, the entire state of Utah. I cannot tell you, we know dozens of people that are Raiders season ticket holders here in the Salt Lake Valley.
Oh, because you got to remember, it's only, 5 hours drive from Salt Lake to Vegas?
It's a 30-minute flight.
Yeah.
It is not a long flight.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at the pathway that everything in the Pac-12 runs through Las Vegas, there's just no doubt about that.
Well, and I think this Las Vegas point's interesting too, because we've speculated and pondered as to why Brett Yormark and the Big 12 have tried to get into that market a little bit, and have run some events there and done some things there. Like, it's interesting. Why was Media Day there instead of, in Texas, let's say, or wherever, that was an interesting move. So that's what I'm saying. Like, anytime we talk about realignment or schools moving or whatever the case may be, expansion, certainly, I think that you have to understand that conversations are being had way ahead of when the public hears about it. And so
yes,
when I think about Brett Yormark's role in this conversation, the Big 12 is sitting here saying, hey, we know what they're cooking up over there in a reimagined Pac-12. Hey, let's go and do Media Day in Vegas and see how that goes for us. Let's put on a good show, put on a good event. And they did. Media Day was very successful for the Big 12 this year. It just was odd when they said it was going to be in Las Vegas. So I think if you put a Pac-12 conference together that has UNLV in it, I mean, you instantly become a Las Vegas market, which I think a lot of people are concerned about. With all due respect, right?
I'm going to tell you that Corvallis and Spokane are not huge markets, And you could quite realistically build this conference around the city of Las Vegas. But again, how much appetite is there? And is UNLV willing to do? You're capable, right? You're capable, but are you willing to do what you have to do to become a Power 5 player at UNLV? You're capable.
It's a big ask, dude. I'm telling you, it's
but
a
are you
huge
willing?
ask.
You're already playing your games at Allegiant. But the question that I would ask, is it worth it for UNLV to allocate the resources financially, the manpower? We're talking again, I go back to this whole thing because everybody in the Pac-12 DMing me and tweeting at me this morning about how I said the Pac-12 was dead, and how many of these institutions are willing to pay $200 million a year to play football?
Yeah, and let's be really clear on the Pac-12 is
but
dead.
That's not
thing.
A small question. That's $200 million.
Yeah, I know. And that's what I'm saying. Like when we talked about the revenue of a lot of these schools the last couple of weeks, you're talking about Ohio State money, bro. You're talking about like the best of the FBS type money. And with all due respect, like it's no shade to, UNLV or Fresno State or San Diego State or whoever you want to look at, but you're not on that level right now. And that's why I'm saying, like, if you're the person this morning saying, oh, well, you guys said the Pac-12 is dead, but now they're reimagining it. Let's be really clear. They haven't reimagined anything yet because they're only at 6 schools right now, assuming that this is all they announced, these 4 additions. So you still have to go out and find a minimum of 2 more. And, it'd be nice if you found 4 more to get to 10. Then after that, you're going to have to justify how a conference full of, USFs or Tulanes or all the schools from the Mountain West, how that's a power conference, because I just don't buy it, man.
Yeah, well, we'll find out here in about 29 minutes when they make that announcement in the Pac-12. But from what we know, and let's talk about what we know. What we know is, according to reports, Boise State, San Diego State, Fresno State, and Colorado State are joining a new Pac-12 conference. This is probably going to cost the Pac-12 with the poaching penalties, the exit fees. And one of the things I'm very interested in, I think it's critical. Are we talking about 2025? I think we are. They did not, and I think this is an important point, they did not extend their scheduling agreement for 2025. So they don't have a football schedule or a scheduling partner for next season. So if you add these 4 teams today and they begin play a year from now, that's close to $150 million in cost just to add these 4 members because of penalties, exit fees, and reading through the Mountain West Grant rights this morning, it's pretty lock solid. And a lot of these penalties that you're going to pay the Mountain West are to help the Mountain West survive until they can move forward, if they're able to move forward. Because if they lose UNLV, I think it's over.
Right.
I just don't know what value you have. I believe that they would probably have to merge, which was brought to me this morning as well, that they would have to merge with Conference USA for survival, which I think if you look at Conference USA and you look at the brands in Conference USA, it would make some sense for Conference USA and for the Mountain West, because you look at Conference USA, Liberty, Louisiana Tech, Florida International, Middle Tennessee, Sam Houston, Western Kentucky, Jacksonville State, Kennesaw State, UTEP, and New Mexico. So you're largely an East Coast conference with a little bit of Texas and New Mexico, folding in the Nevadas of the world, the Air Force academies of the world. That makes a lot of sense geographically.
Sure.
So I think the Mountain West and Conference USA have some absolute equity in each other.
Synergy.
And these exit fees, if you get $150 million in a cash windfall from these exiting 4 members at a minimum, and I think that pushes closer to $175 million if UNLV goes with. If you're getting that kind of money, I think you are in a position now where you will be able to survive for a year and then merge with Conference USA. So I would keep an eye on that move. I know Gloria Nevarez has fantastic relationships across the college athletics landscape. So I am certain that she already has had a plan. She's known about this. I'm told, by the way, that this is at least 6 weeks old because they've known for several months that this merger, they tried to merge the Mountain West, and I guess maybe I'm underselling part of the lead. The Mountain West and the Pac-12 tried to get together and expand what I was told was a framework agreement for a merger, and they just were not able to come together on money. They were not able to come together on who was going to run that conference. They just weren't able to finally iron out the details to get that over the line, which is why the scheduling agreement had a poaching clause in it. Hey, you're going to poach our schools. You're going to pay us a minimum of $10 million for each one you take. So right there, you're at $40 million, right? So I think it's going to be $36 million per university to leave. That right there is, what is that? That's $140 million. You do some quick math there. 120 million, 144 million, 184 million. Like you're into this for a good chunk of change. And what I am also told is there are some negotiations going on behind the scenes for what that total penalty number will be, exit fees and poaching. But if I'm Gloria Nevarez, I am not. In reading their grant of rights this morning, there is no provision in the grant of rights that she has to negotiate that down.
Yeah, I mean, I just wouldn't negotiate it down. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not sure why. Like again, and this is what we see in college football: this poaching, this sort of consolidation where you're the Mountain West and you've got this. I guess we're going to call it a conference. These two schools that are trying to reboot a conference are poaching your best brands. So I wouldn't negotiate it down. I wouldn't budge at all. I would say, hey, if you're trying to do this, you can go ahead and cut us a check.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and cough up all the fees in the grant of rights, and then we'll go from there. And I don't know, to me, I understand that it's valuable to have relationships with people across the landscape, but if I'm her, I'm not budging at all. I'm leaning on the grants of rights, an agreement that everyone signed, and you're gonna have to pay your way out. And if you want to do it that badly, then go ahead and cut the check.
Yeah, and just texting with a source of mine, I think USF, and people are coming online now, so we're starting to hear back from some of our sources. USF, I think, is absolutely a target. I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, and I don't know this to be fact, but 2 weeks ago, I was talking to somebody who was talking about Tulane being a great target because they were a target previously. And the real issue here is you don't have SMU as a target anymore because SMU is in the ACC. And getting out of the ACC, I think it'd be very difficult for them.
And I also think that's a huge part of this conversation.
I do as well. I think that, I think USF, Tulane, UTSA, and UNLV is a really good flow chart.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's a really good pathway. I think that makes a lot of sense. USF, again, is in Tampa, which gives you the Gulf Coast in South Florida. They have a great relationship with the University of Miami, which I think is interesting. Although, honestly, I have heard that Miami and USF are Big 12 targets as well. I think that's something to look at because there's no doubt the Big 12 is in a far better place than this reimagined Pac-12 would be.
Right.
But I think a lot of this is hyperbole, and I think we need to be careful with that. What we know is that you look at this breaking news, Boise State, San Diego State, Fresno State, and Colorado State in about 20 minutes will be announced as the newest members of the Pac-12.
Yeah, I just think that there is a lot of risk involved in this.
Yes.
A
huge amount of risk.
Yeah, as we talk through this and as we we kind of wrap our heads around this, if you will. You're talking about restarting this conference without a way to easily justify that you are a power conference. And I know I keep bringing that up, but isn't that why you would do this if you're any of these schools? Why
Yeah.
would, like, if you think about, like, why would Boise State, as a perfect example, as we said earlier, why is Boise State doing this? Well, they're doing it because they're clearly being told, hey, like, obviously we're going to get that Power 5 designation back. And then from there, we need to win some football games. So if you win your football games and you join this conference, you're going to make more money. And that, to me, I just don't think that's a certainty. I don't think that's a given. Like, you look at, the way Ross Dellinger, who reported this, spoke about that portion of it. He's very careful to say that it would be presumed that they would have an AQ, an auto qualifier, but he was very careful not to say that would be as a power conference, just that they would be able to get an auto qualifier.
And the first thing I was told this morning is, I from a very well placed sources, I don't see how this would make them whole as a power conference.